Welcome back to Let's Play Final Fantasy 1. Last time we went to what was it called? Nefia something? I don't know. That was like half an hour ago when I recorded that. Lufenia, that was the name of it. Off screen, I actually got some magic off screen at Lufenia. If you go to the top right, you can actually go to a hidden magic store. So I actually got Holy and Flare. So that magic into... Wait, didn't I buy something else? I thought I bought another piece of... Oh yeah, full life. It's behind my monitor. Oh well. This time we entered the Mirage Tower, which is actually not really a mirage per se. I start noticing that the enemies are actually a lot tougher. Also, I should point out that level 39 is when white mages slash white wizards and also black wizards can actually learn all of their magic. So sadly, Flare is like the only really good piece of magic for black mages based on my playstyle. I don't usually use like status buffs and stuff, so it really wouldn't help me to have bought like, you know, all the different magic for our black wizard, because I would never use it and it would just be a waste of gil. You should be noticing very quickly that the enemies are actually getting a lot tougher. So yeah, pull off a Hilara. So we actually have two things we could do. We could go straight to the end. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? But there's actually some pretty good equipment in here. So we're actually gonna go get that before we progress. Luckily it's on the blob right in the center of the room, so it's actually pretty easy to get. Not a whole lot of effort needed to go get this magic. Unfortunately, I'm also fairly certain that every time you actually leave this dungeon, I mean the next dungeon, you actually have to go through the Mirage Tower again. So this actually does take a fair amount of time, if I'm not mistaken. As far as I'm aware, there's actually no like trap tiles in this section, so that's kind of a relief. Next section, however, I'm not entirely sure. Black Knight and the Nightmare. We've been seeing a lot of nightmares actually, so by now they're not really much of a threat. Nightmares actually appear in hidden dungeons as well. I think they're in like the Earth Gift Shrine. Speaking of the Earth Gift Shrine, I was actually reading that to 100% the game, you actually have to play the Earth Gift Shrine 4 times. That's not happening, FYI. In case you're wondering if I was gonna do a full 100% Let's Play, that's not happening. Because, actually, I think the way I'm gonna do it is I'll do it one time and then maybe just show the other bosses. And maybe just leave it at that, but don't expect me to play all the bosses, because that will take forever. I mean, play through the dungeon, and like, a lot of the hidden dungeons, you actually have to play several times to actually see every enemy. So if you want 100% completion, it's really not fun. Again, this is why most people do not complete this game, because it just takes way too long to justify all that effort. So we actually got some decent equipment, actually. Wow, that's actually a step back, the Mithril Shield. Vorpal Sword is actually weaker than what we have. Did not exactly expect that. Healing Helm, I mean, that's cool and all, but it's like not really that helpful for us. Actually, I never equipped the ribbon. Maybe I should have done so sooner, since it doesn't actually change your stats at all. Wow, I never equipped the ruby armlet either. So yeah, I'm way behind on my setup apparently. Sure, go with that. Actually, no, the accuracy is actually worse, so let's go with that instead. That was just weird stuff I was doing there. I accidentally just triggered an encounter, essentially. By complete accident, that's what I'm trying to say. Stuttering, stop, please. This dungeon isn't very long, because it's just sort of a mini dungeon before the actual main event. So it shouldn't take too long. We should be to the next dungeon by the end of this episode, halfway through even. So we got vampires. You may recognize the vampire from way earlier on in the game. Unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, their levels are essentially the same. So, despite being a former boss, they actually go down like 2 turns. Even ganging up on us like that, they still went down very quickly. So we actually have to maneuver out, back, and down. Lots of encounters, expect to get pretty destroyed through here. Also, I still haven't actually taught any magic to the other characters yet, just because I can never remember to do that. It's just so rare that you're at a town that has level 4 magic, or level 3 magic, or whatever. Also, last time I mentioned something along the lines of the leveling system being a little bit different. Yeah, it's a lot easier to get levels in this game. From what I've read, it's way easier to level up. So it does actually make the difficulty curve a lot lower, but a lot of people don't like that because it's a little bit too easy to level grind, according to a lot of people. Personally, less level grinding the better, so I have no objections to this. Am I even going the right way? I am. Okay. There's the door. If I had gone like 2 steps further, I wouldn't have had to ask that. I'm just gonna cast a regular fire just out of curiosity. If that goes through, yeah, if that went through, that would have actually been pretty bad. Case in point, we'll actually get to see why that's really bad, because these guys aren't tough by any means, but it does drag out the fight quite a bit, which is a problem I have with a lot of enemies in this game, that they aren't tough, they just drag out battles. This floor is actually kind of confusing, looking at the map off screen. It's kind of mazy again, but not quite the same. Guardians, I guess these are probably like the robots that we saw earlier, just better rendered. I would assume that that's what they are. I'm not sure what they're weak to, actually. My common sense is telling me that they might be weak to thunder because of them being technological. A lot of times in video games in general, robot type enemies are weak to thunder and lightning attacks. Guess now would also be a good time to point out that thunder is actually a misnomer. Thundaga, Thundara, all those are wrong technically because thunder is actually the noise part of it. Lightning is actually the bolt part of it. So yeah, the fact that they always call it a thunder spell doesn't actually make any sense whatsoever. Wow, there are way more encounters here than I remembered. Or maybe I'm just unlucky, that's another possibility. And this dungeon isn't even that long, it shouldn't be taking like 10 minutes. If you had no encounters, this would be over in no time, flat. Just as is, it just drags. Yeah, we'll probably actually spend the entire episode in the dungeon because just of how long this is because of encounters, not even because of just, you know, the actual length of the dungeon, straight up. Yep, definitely a slight complaint I have towards the game. Earthbound Beginnings is like this too though, so again, it's just a part of the time. It's not really anything that the game did wrong even, it's just, at the time, people had different standards. And I feel like part of it has to do, to put it bluntly, with Steam. And the sort of Steam culture, I want to say. That's kind of a weird way to put it, but it's the only way I can think of. It's just that back then, games cost like $60, $70. And frankly, not as many games came out then. Gaming was a very fresh market because of the crash in '83, which was sort of resurrected by the NES. So at this point, it's like gaming was just starting to take off again. This was like, what was it, 87? So yeah, gaming was kind of just recovering. Square Enix, for starters, was also recovering from a huge slouch in their revenue. So again, this game was named Final Fantasy because they thought it would be their final game. Hironobu Sakaguchi also, who made the game, I think also was gonna get a different job, like go back to college or something, if this game had failed, if I'm not mistaken. Though actually he's contradicted himself. In a recent interview, he actually said that the name derived from alliteration, that they originally had a working title, Fighting Fantasy, but that there was already some work with that name, so they couldn't use it. So they wanted to keep the alliteration of FF. So which one it actually is, no one actually really knows. It's just sort of said to be weird that he, like, years later be like, oh hi, I actually was wrong about what I said. It's like, why would he tell that story in the first place and then be like, oh wait, actually that's not how it happened. It's just a little bit weird and off-putting. Was it someone else who said the other Final Fantasy story? Yeah, because there are tons of different myths, I guess, about where the name comes from. So yeah. Which exact one is true, who knows? I'd be inclined to believe the former just because of how terrible a lot of their pre-Final Fantasy games actually were. One of them was, I think, called, like, King's Knight or something, which was actually like a shooter, I think, like a top-down shooter. It was really bad, apparently. So, yeah, Squaresoft really had a bad time for a while, and it didn't get any better as time went on. Hey, they had a pretty good run for like 10 entries, but also a failed movie, which didn't help. Final Fantasy Spirits Within was really expensive because of the CG involved and the motion capture involved, and it bombed because, well, Uncanny Valley to the max. Uncanny Valley is a term in robotics, but also stems to animation, where the animation quality is getting so realistic to the point where you start to notice things are off, and just these little things being off throw off everything. A common example of the Uncanny Valley is actually the eyes, because you can motion capture someone's face, that's not a problem, but the eyes are really hard to actually get motion capture for. And getting realistic eyes is incredibly difficult, and if you don't get the eyes right, the entire face looks off. So a good example, according to a lot of people, is Uncharted 3, where the eyes are just sort of off. Like, everything else in the game looks great, but just the eyes are so weird looking in that game that a lot of people really weren't crazy about the graphics, even though, for the most part, it looked pretty good. Like, LA Noire is another example of the Uncanny Valley because the, well, as the developer said, you can't really do motion capture on a suit. You can do motion capture on a face, but not on, like, an article of clothing. So a lot of, like, the body language and such is really lacking in LA Noire. So a lot of people really didn't like the game because of that. I mean, the faces were said to be good, but just the rest of the bodies were off, and that's why nowadays, like with Uncharted, they do both. They do like full body motion capture to get all the motions right, so like you avoid that problem as LA Noire ran into of being really stiff. Okay, that little tangent aside, we are actually almost to the end. What time are we at? 13 minutes. Okay, we're good. We're fine. Okay, maybe not, but we got preemptive, so that's cool. Yeah, it had a pretty big cast for the Spirits Within as well. Well, for the time, in a 90s sense. It was pretty big. But yeah, it just wasn't financially successful, and I have heard that that's part of the reason for the merger with Enix, because Square and Enix were actually different companies. Enix did the Dragon Quest series. So, oh hey, Blue Dragon, there's actually a Hironobu Sakaguchi game named Blue Dragon. Just a little fun fact. I've never played it, it's actually coming to Xbox One though, so maybe I'll actually play it. Not full remake or anything, but it's getting a back-compatible version, which, that's cool. I think it was published by Microsoft, actually. Anyway, this is a forced encounter with a Blue Dragon, so it's like, oh, well, saw your brother outside, okay. Kind of waited, apparently. And this guy's just more patient. Anyway, now that that's done, lots of levels, and let's talk to this guy. Use the Warp Cube to travel beyond the sky. It'll take you to the Flying Fortress. As advertised, there we go. Flying Fortress, aka the last location of a crystal. It's a 5-floor dungeon, but it's actually a lot easier than the Sunken Shrine in a lot of ways. Because even though it's technically just as long, the floors are generally less mazy as far as I remember. This is also where you get the adamantite, so keep that in mind. Keep an eye out for any sort of treasure, because it could be the adamantite. I'll point out exactly which one it is, but if you're playing it for yourself, yeah, you'll want to make sure to get that, because again, one of the dwarves really wants it, so he'll probably give us whatever he crafts with it. Not to make it sound super greedy, but yeah, it's a really good weapon, so you do actually want to go the extra mile. Again, another reason to stock up on healing items and healers, like I said last time, is because look how long that took. It took like 12-13 minutes to get through the Mirage Tower. If you have to go back, you have to make that trek all over again, which is not fun. So, just for the sake of ease, it is worth your time to actually stock up on as many items as you can carry, so you don't have to constantly backtrack. In fact, I should have actually bought some low-level healing spells for other characters as well, so we would have other people to heal, like backup healers, I guess you could say. Sunbrand against the undead. As far as I'm aware, there really aren't that many undead here, but the attack power is nothing to sneeze at, so we're actually equipping it. But yeah, this level is just so much more easy to navigate, even though it's technically the last one. So it feels a little bit backwards. I mean, it's kind of nice having a slightly more linear dungeon, but still, it just doesn't make sense to me why you put your technically hardest dungeon 3rd rather than 4th. Actually, I'd say the final dungeon is the hardest, mostly because of the encounter rate mixed with just the the general strength of everything there. Final Fantasy 2 is actually the worst, because in Final Fantasy 2, I remember when I played that for my first time, I save scummed like there was no tomorrow. Like, the amount of saving I did in the final level, which is called Pandemonium, by the way, was ridiculous. I saved like every 5 steps because that's how hard the final dungeon of 2 is. Worst part is the boss actually went down super easily, so it's like everything leading up to the boss took forever, and it was constantly getting in my way and killing me. The boss himself, pretty easy. So yeah. I mean, that happened in the one temple in this game too, where it's like we were getting really destroyed by all those enemies, but for some reason, Lich went down really quickly. Air Elemental, Spirit Naga, these are new enemies, they aren't really much to sneeze at though. I don't know what Blink even does, actually. Anyway, it looked like it was casting it on himself, which is peculiar. I also don't think there were traditional stairs in this level, I think there were just warp points, which kind of freshens things up a little bit. Yeah, though I may be mistaken about that. Who knows? Again, my memory of this game is really foggy because, again, it's been like at least 3 or 4 years since I last played it. Probably more like 4 or 5 years since I last played it. So yeah, apologies if I really don't seem confident about my navigational skills. Also, just I have a horrible sense of direction in real life, so that doesn't help. Anyway, we're actually almost at time, so I guess we're gonna have to get the remaining treasures here next time. So, we'll finish up this. Actually, we don't even probably have time to finish up the fight. In any case, I guess I'll just sign off here, so thank you for watching, and I hope you join me next time for more Final Fantasy. Actually, we can get these treasures really quickly, hopefully. There we get that, and this. Now, thank you for watching, and I hope you join me next time for more Final Fantasy. Bye!